Thank you. Oh, gosh. Fuck, gushy much? Jesus Christ, oh my God. All right, morning everyone. Welcome to Creative Mornings. I'm going to start with a little disclaimer. Anyone who self-describes as a creative, I'm instantly suspicious. I feel like you're probably a sociopath or you had very few friends in high school. But anyway, moving on. So the things we'll be talking about this morning, we're going to be talking about courage, and those things that we talk about will be applicable to people who are in the creative industries, but also I'm hoping that they'll have value beyond that. I'll give you a little, oh that's right, I won't have the remote anymore, so I'm going to be stopping every 2 seconds to tell Molly to move the slide for me. That's cool. Okay, so first off, where are we? Here we are, courage. What is it? Why do we need it? So you can flick to the side now. Okay, so Google says courage means the ability to do something that frightens one. It's bravery, as in she called on all her courage to face the ordeal. Okay, flick it. And there she is. Okay, so with courage, with that definition of courage, we have a noun, we have an ability or a trope of character to be obtained, we have a ground of action. Okay, you stop at that one, stay there. I'm just trying to make it relatable with Yoda there. We have a ground of action. Oh, hold up, my notes have completely gone. Give me 2 seconds. We have a ground of action in the face of resistance rather than action itself. So courage is intangible. It's a state of mind or it's an attitude. It's even a spiritual nuance. And it's something that characterizes unlikely action when conditions are unfavorable. So this would suggest courage is a quality that only appears in those who are facing adversity. And that the symptoms of courage are the inaction of defiance. They are an outward striving to attain a psychic alignment that has been disrupted by external bullshit. So it's funny that the closer we look at courage, the closer it hews to New Agey tropes of self-actualization. But actually, where there's courage, there has to be a strong motive power of desire. So you can flick to the side now. Here we go. So, and that desire might simply stem from the avoidance of pain, resulting in courageous efforts to leap from or remove certain hurdles. We could call this kind of courage negative courage. There we go. And that it's primarily motivated by evasive maneuvers around a painful reality. Or the desire might stem from an appetite or a vision for a new reality, a compulsion that we could call positive courage. There we go. Just meaning that it's motivated by a push for something new for its own sake and not just the removal of pain. So these are obviously very, very blunt polarities, and it's a very rough sketch, but also relatable because it broadly places action and a metric of pleasure and pain. There we go. It also shows that whether positive or negative, courage and desire are very closely linked and go hand in hand. So you cannot have one without the other. They're practically synonymous. So I've given courage the hybrid formula of desire plus bullshit. Oh, next slide, keep going. There we go, there it is. With 2 flags, positive and negative. Next slide. Awesome. So you might be tempted to think that it's only the positive kind of courage that relates to creativity, but this is life and nothing's as clean as that. Who is to say that an instant of positive courage isn't also motivated by a splinter in someone's reality which they're trying to rectify? Adversely, who's also to say that an instant of negative courage isn't actually more than the removal of adverse elements without a positive vision of what it might substitute? So you see it's, oh, no, go back. Pretend you didn't see that. So you see it's not a perfect dyad, but the positive and negative bleed into each other and they inform each other. So moving on, we're going to look at a template of adverse or unfavorable conditions that are conducive to courage, which I think we can all relate to. It's that one. That's the one. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is, hit it again, tall poppy. There we go. So I don't know how relevant a concept it is in 2018, but to rehash, tall poppy is a typically New Zealand habit of being overly critical of someone who is either successful or who is outwardly striving to be successful. So obviously this is very subjective. Success can mean different things to different people and across different disciplines, but if tall poppy does exist across the board, what does it say about New Zealand and what does it say about being a New Zealander? You can go across now. Okay, firstly, it speaks of an insecurity. maybe even a self-loathing, whereby it's very Kiwi not to expect good things because we don't deserve them. Which is what makes us so defensive and critical when we see good things happening to our peers. It also says a lot about the classes that New Zealand has historically been made up of. Predominantly a working class with only exemptions of wealth, which conceivably a working class would be resentful of, maybe even hostile toward. In this way, class resentment and its common company of self-deprecation create a glass ceiling which it is socially unacceptable to exceed. It's pretty dank. It's pretty dank. So I don't know if anyone else has noticed this, but we're also monotone mumblers. Push this up. There we go. Monotone mumblers. Which I think is also connected to our insecurity. It's kind of like a physical symptom where we don't think we deserve to have a voice, so we speak as unintelligibly as possible because to be heard in any significant way is just unthinkable. This is actually my least favorite thing about being a Kiwi. I fucking hate it. So these class-based insecurities have also had the unfortunate effect of fostering a deep conservatism. Oh, no, go back. Oh, no, go back. There you go. No, sorry, I got a click in my neck. A deep conservatism. Sorry. Sorry, I just lost my notes again. I'll be right with you. It's no secret that oppressed or impoverished classes will embrace conservative and archaic mores for their alleged stability, but this is mostly a defense mechanism against perceived threats, such as peers climbing or aspiring to climb out of class ruts. And it's a defensive attitude largely based on solidarity, because change, even change for the better, would upset existing networks that are used to make a shitty situation bearable. And in this atmosphere of cloying conservatism, you might be tempted to curb your inhibition or to dim your grander inclinations about yourself because anything else would feel antisocial. And I'm not saying that the only way to neutralize conservatism is to rise above these misgivings and become monstrous. There you go. But I am saying that it's far better to thrust ahead in sync with desire than it is to repress desire, especially if that repression is to appease the anxieties of a sick culture. Okay, cool. So another context for courage, one with particular hostility under its belt, is one that I'll loosely term call-out culture. There we go. So, now I'm bringing call-out into critical focus. I'm not about to defend perpetrators or anything, but what I will say is that here there is an entire rhetoric dedicated to the abolition of proper engagement. I mean, if you need bringing up to speed, call-out culture is the one that we're currently in, where social media is used as a platform to air grievances and offences outside proper channels. I mean, personally, there are aspects of this that I love. For example, if the justice system isn't doing its job, then why shouldn't people do what they can by smearing perps who are privileged by legal ineptitude? And we can see the effects of this logic in the Me Too movement, just as like a topical example, but also in the way our language has changed. I mean, etiquettes have scrambled to catch up with the lightning speed of changes that are happening on social media. The do's and don'ts of common speech are clearly defined in these circles, and much prejudice is identified and uprooted from this policing, which is fantastic, it's great. It's also a great example of virtual space supplementing rather than substituting real space in a very direct way for which there is no precedent in history. However, the danger is when this digital populism becomes militant and stops being an open-ended and free forum. Instead of mutual engagement, there's now a culture of mutual suspicion. The given of any interaction in such a climate is that everyone you meet is a potential perp, made 10 times worse by an unfortunate tendency to profile both victim and perpetrator. Ironically, a logic of profiling is what's perceived to be inadequate with our justice system in the first place. And so for an open and allegedly democratic forum to take on the manners and register of the institution that it's resisting is just tragic. When a majority has given over to a culture of cynical witch hunting, where even minor slights are aired with Shakespearean aplomb, it takes a serious amount of courage to resist a trend of normative profiling and to reintroduce some criticality. Basically, what I'm talking about is the courageous ability to have a serious conversation with someone, which, being insecure New Zealand is it any wonder we've lost to a climate of embittered demographies? It's gotten as bad as this ability to have a conversation with someone being labelled a call-in, like basic communication is some new trending thing, or has to be reintroduced as a novelty to be at all effective. With this in mind, what can it mean to have courage in New Zealand? So, sorry, if we're talking about sick cultures and surviving them, then I think it's impossible not to talk about queerness and the courageous decision to step out as queer. So I know it seems luxurious to even talk about and the relative safety of K Road. And something I'm certainly guilty of is complacency and of forgetting that cosmopolitan liberal attitudes are not necessarily the staple of smaller communities. In fact, provincial New Zealand, like the provinces of most developed countries, I guess, is probably where you'll find fresh class resentment and the defensive conservatism that comes with that. But even for cisgendered and straight people, I think the lesson in courage that Queerness demonstrates is a broad one. I mean, it's the perfect example of finding alignment with desire and sticking to it in the midst of adversity or hostility, which I've already submitted as a wider definition of courage. I'm getting so sick of saying courage, I'm sorry, oh my gosh. What's more interesting here is how queerness is often specifically targeted. Oh, sorry, I've lost my notes again. Damn it, I've lost my gravitas of what I was saying. Oh, here we go. What's more interesting is how queerness is often specifically targeted in smaller communities as a threat, one that's staunchly rejected in favour of archaic gender roles. And why is that? It's class again, which obviously no one's happy about, that's fine. So queerness, with its liberal affiliations, is coded with, and this one's a total mouthful, you can hit it now, metropolitan verticality, which is just a fancy way of saying it gives people agency in cities. So of course I'm speaking generally, and there's always going to be exceptions, but this idea of queerness ties in with my own experience, where I remember as a teenager making the conscious decision to identify with my own queerness, while also unconsciously deciding to reject or ignore being Māori, because on some level I understood that being aligned one way gave me socioeconomic agency, and then being aligned another way gave me no prospects whatsoever. And I'm not saying that I chose to be gay, obviously. I mean, God, that's a whole other thing, fuck. But there was a decision to present as loudly queer